We made it.
Hello.
Hello.
Now, my biggest thing is going to be hearing Megan, although I'm here on Riverside, finally, about
Are
my
we
fifth
here?
attempt to try and get on here. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to disconnect my microphone because often that does not work. So, yeah, now I can hear you.
That's weird.
Fantastic. So, that was like going to be a 5-part series on my live event on Facebook, but that's okay. I tried my best. And although it said I was live and I could see you in the chat, I couldn't get you in the conversation. So that's okay.
We're here.
That is what you call technology. And Instagram kindly told me when I got over there that my account is not eligible for lives.
That's weird.
Yeah, so that must have something to do with being a professional account and not being able to go live anymore. If you're just an individual on Instagram, that's fine. But if you're a professional, there must be some setting about not being able to go live.
It's frustrating.
Which has changed because you used to be able to go live whenever you liked on Instagram. So I will look into that when I'm finished. And that's okay because I know you don't have much power. Megan has no power currently. She's running off her phone internet. So this could be a shorter conversation, and that's okay as well. We'll do our best.
It'll be amazing.
It will be amazing. So I've already introduced in the event. I've already given the background. The videos will upload, but I'll give a quick background again. So this session is basically for anyone who is interested in strength, and that includes whether you're just a coach, an athlete, casual gym goer, or anyone who really just wants to feel better in their bodies. This is why I called it From Stiff to Strong. The reason being, after 15 years of strength training, before I discovered the movement flow that you use, Megan, I used to do all the stretching. Actually, let me reverse that. I used to do no stretching. So for the first maybe 5 years of Olympic weightlifting, I would do the basic warm-up, which is just some basic stretches to be able to get into the correct positions for Olympic weightlifting. I certainly didn't do much. I would have done a couple of minutes at the start of the session. Then after I started getting niggles and things, I thought I'd better spend a bit more time doing mobility. So it was then that I got into rolling and also into stretching, dynamic stretching before I train, and then longer hold. My dogs are going to bark, they always do. Longer holds after my training. So that is the typical journey of lifters, because that is how we are educated. We are educated to just do enough mobility at the start so that we can get into the positions that we want to get into. And the problem that we face there is, yes, you can get into a deeper squat. Yes, you can get your shoulders back beside your ears for an overhead press. Yes, you can loosen up your thoracic spine so that you can get into a nice bench press position or whatever it may be. But it's very, very short-lived. In fact, by the end of the session, if you retested your range of motion, you would have gone back to where you were at the start. So you get into this chronic pattern of feeling stiff, stretching to make it feel better for 20 minutes or just to get through your session, finishing the session, and 20 minutes after the session, when you've cooled down, you're feeling stiff again. And you've lost that range of motion that you thought you had. Now, some people might think, well, that's okay, you had it for your session. But let's be real, how long are we spending in our sessions per week? Like maybe 10 hours out of an entire week, we're actually doing our training. So for the rest of the time, we are in positions that are detrimental to our posture and to our range of motion and ultimately to our health. So this is for those of you that haven't come across Megan yet. So you're not part of my Strength Seekers group, or you're new to following me, then I've been working with Megan for a couple of years now and using all of her programming, her movement flow programming, for all of my lifters. It's a staple in our programming, in my programming. So she does warm-ups. We do warm-ups or warm-downs. The warm-ups are most likely the most valuable because they're short and they start taking the lifters through some of the range of motion. The ones where you really get the most bang for your buck are the longer ones that I often program on people's off days and or on weekends. So that's why I've called this From Stiff to Strong. And Megan, can you just give people, for those of you that haven't come across you yet, so a little bit of your background?
Yeah, I'm an athletic therapist in Canada. So it's like a sports physical therapist, and I think will probably be the equivalent for you guys. So 12 years of injury rehab, chronic pain, stiffness, mobility, helping people. I've been a yoga instructor for coming up on 7 years. And it was the marrying of those two worlds together where things finally clicked for all my athletes and clients, where we actually started making mobility stick and finally breaking out of that cycle by not just stretching, not just strength training and rehab, but combining them all together.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. So let's get right into it. And the first thing I want to do, want to ask you is, what is your definition of mobility? Because mobility is a word that's thrown around everywhere. So, what is your definition of mobility?
Yeah, it's definitely the buzzword of like Instagram and social media these days. When I use the word mobility, it's the range of motion that you have available at a joint or segment that is accessible, strong, resilient, and essentially usable.
Okay, that's fantastic. So, as I said at the start, why do you think that lifters, especially strength athletes, lifters, whether you're doing lifts or not, I mean, we're all doing lifts, we're lifting weights in whatever fashion. Why do you think they feel tight despite stretching and rolling? Why do they still feel tight?
Stretching is temporary and it's passive. So we're either using your body weight or gravity or tools to pull yourself into a position. So you're getting like the stretch fibers temporarily release or relax. And then we often just get that rebound back because your body has no idea how to keep it there. It's like when your joints are stiff and like your knuckles crack, like they're going to get stiff again. That's why people will often like foam rolling the T spine and you get all the pops, cracks, and releases, but you got to still do that every day because you didn't teach your body how to use that new range of motion that you gave it. So then it just reverts back to either what it knows, what it feels safe doing, what you're comfortable with, and the patterns and movements that you're already good at instead of exploring those new ranges.
Okay, yeah, because it's a universal complaint
Yeah.
of people who do strength, is that constant feeling of tightness.
Mhm.
And so what we're going to explore today is, how does the way that you teach mobility, in your definition, how does that influence force production, so how much force we can produce, stability, which is extremely important, and help us with our technique, because those are the three things that we're all looking for as strength athletes. I've often been told by physiotherapists when I work with them, Leanne, you're really strong, but you're not so stable in some positions. So can you talk about how the mobility that you're talking about can help force production, stability, and ultimately technique?
Yeah, when it comes to joint stability, that's being strong on all sides of the joint and being able to keep the joint in the proper position alignment that we want for a lift or a movement, and having that ability to pull yourself in and out of the positions and absorb forces, right? So forces can transmit to where we need them to go. Oftentimes, if you are unstable in the shoulder, for example, that's where we get all those micro movements. It feels like the bar might be falling behind you. You're not able to keep it locked in, packed, keep the bar, the dumbbell, or whatever it is up above, because that joint's just like a golf ball sitting on a golf tee and it's just moving around all over the place, instead of all the muscles on all the sides of it keeping it locked in and stable and essentially strong. So if you want better technique in your lifts, we need that passive flexibility of the muscles, the ligaments, the joint capsule to allow you to get into that position. But then to maintain that position, you need the stabilizer muscles to be co-contracting and active. And the way that we program that is by getting into the positions or closer, as close as you can to them, and learning how to engage the muscles on all the different sides of the joint in the pulling and the pushing sides of it, so that we start to create those nerve firing patterns from your brain to the muscles in a nice controlled way. And then we can start playing with speed and different body positions and resisting external movements, similar to how, like, if the bar is offsetting your weight load, it's going to try to pull you back. Are you able to keep locked in and pull forward? And there's phases that we can do through all of those, as well as the body position that you're in, which will help your technique. Because a lot of the times in yoga and in general stretching, we're always in like a perfect neutral spine or upright posture, or you're sitting and working on shoulder mobility, or you're standing and doing all your shoulder circles, which is great, except when you're at the bottom of a squat and your hips are open and externally rotated and your pelvis is at a different angle and your spine's at a different angle. Do you still have that ability to get your shoulder up above your head? Are your lats long enough, lengthened enough to do that and again produce force there? So we start to train all those different angles from different base positions as well, so that you really get that translation from the exercise or the drill into the sport and into that technique.
Yeah, that's amazing, because what you're talking about there is specificity, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's exactly the same as if I wanted to teach you to squat, I wouldn't go and put you on a leg press machine, because it's a totally different movement pattern and all your joints are in a different position.
Mhm.
You want to be specific to the movement that you're training. You want to be strong in the movement and the range of motion that you're training. So this is why, well, like you said, doing thoracic extension on a roller, is that going to translate into being able to have enough extension in your upper back to be able to hold a barbell over the center of your gravity in a squat?
Yeah.
It's a totally different ball game, because when you're in a squat, it changes your hip position, which obviously is going to cause, like, if you don't have that range of motion, if you're not in that range, and then exhibiting, showing that thoracic extension, then it's a totally different movement. It's a totally different position. So this is what's unique about your movement flow. I call Megan's program Movement Flow. I just love that name, because we're flowing in through the movement. We're not just lying on a roller and flowing. We're flowing throughout the movement, throughout the positions that we want to be in. There's another, so there's another thing too, Megan, that I think inhibits a lifter's ability to get into positions, and that is our nervous system. So can you talk to the audience about how their nervous system plays a massive role in getting into the positions? You might be able to get into the position statically. So you might be able to hold an overhead squat. Beautiful. But what happens when we do a heavier snatch or a snatch balance? For those of you that aren't Olympic weightlifters, that is getting down into that overhead squat really fast. So the force changes. So when we talk about nervous system and getting into that position, how does that play a role in how your body responds?
Yeah, physiologically, there's two different things that are going to be happening, right? Like, one is the nervous system side of it, which is going to be, does your body feel safe there? Are you able to even access that range, or is your body like tightening things up and resisting it so you can't even get into it? And can, like, you fire the muscles that need to fire to produce the movement or allow you to get in there from a conscious and that reflexive subconscious level as well? And then there is the physiology side of it, of like just the tissue quality. Is that going to be a limiting factor? So when we've been stiff and sore and tight for so long, sometimes it truly is tissue quality, which is we've never used those muscles, we've never stretched the ligaments, we've never let the fascia and connective tissue adapt into those positions. So that's one stream of training that we often have to take to gradually load the tissue and teach it how to become more resilient and adaptable, so that the capacity of it raises to withstand and produce more force. Once that happens, we still have to let your body know that it's safe and okay and comfortable there to express that range of motion and produce the force. And that's the nervous system side of it, where we need to be able to practice ramping up the contractions. So, can we contract the muscles and everything at a lower level? And can we do it at a higher level? Can we pull ourselves in, push ourselves out of the position, and change direction pretty quickly? And that comes from repetition and intensity of being in those positions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Because I'll give you a classic example in the Olympic weightlifting world again. And the reason I'm using Olympic weightlifting as examples is because it's dynamic. So
Mhm.
in powerlifting, for example, squat, bench, dead, you can get into a position, you can get into your start position, lock everything in and maintain the tension, and like with a deadlift, and just stand up with the bar, as long as you can hold, your muscles have enough endurance to actually hold the lats down, and you also have that connection. Can you
Mhm.
actually feel what your back is doing? Can you feel what your lats are doing? That's a really important thing. As a coach, I say, pull your lats down, and people are like, they don't actually know how to feel the lats. They don't know where they are. So you have to teach them where their lats are. So the reason but the power lifters have just that little bit more time to be
Mhm.
able to feel their bodies, feel where their bodies are, control the contractions, the push and the pull while they're doing the movement. But in Olympic weightlifting, you have 1 or 2 seconds. So you can't override it with the prefrontal cortex thinking. You can't. It's impossible. Once you've started the lift, whatever your body feels safe doing, whatever range of motion that your joints are capable of getting into, is what's going to happen in that lift. So for a lot of older lifters that start the sport older, they never get into that overhead squat position. As
Mhm.
soon as the bar gets heavy, they default to a power snatch, which means they're only bending their knees a little bit, because they're not safe. They don't feel safe in the overhead squat position with a load above their head. So if we take this and look at your movement flows, because I know how they're structured, it's very hard to tell people on screen how they're structured, but can you actually explain to the audience how you lead the body and the brain and the nervous system through those positions in your movement flows? Like, what do you do differently that's not just a standard warm up of roll your thoracic spine, do some openers, do some Cossack squats, do some Russian baby makers, do all that stuff, and then get into your workout? How is your movement flow different to that?
Yeah, so all those things that you just mentioned are really great for highlighting what you already have access to. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to give you more if we're just going through those motions back and forth. Even if you time it with your breath and you're like going into the movement on the exhale, it's not, sure, you're going to relax a little bit, but that's not changing the tissue quality or the nervous system confidence in it. So what we do differently is all the various progressions of positions, so starting with one joint at a time, then multi-joint, and then changing the different base positions, we're accessing a range of motion, so actively taking that joint or segment through a range to its end range of what we have control over. We back off a little bit, and then we use a lot of the functional range conditioning principles of gradual progressive overloading to create tension in the muscle in the rest of our body so that we isolate to that joint or segment. And then we start to ramp up isometric contractions to start with. And that's going to try to work the opposing sides of the joints. So we've got the, like for shoulder flexion, for example, we're getting to this end position. Maybe we're actively squeezing out every possible bit that we can. And against some other kind of resistance, we're going the opposite way. If you're in like pigeon position, for example, trying to open up into the hips, we're driving the knee and the thigh down into the ground to activate those muscles, stimulate all the mechanoreceptors, get the muscle fibers contracting in that stretched, lengthened position. And then we're pulling our body forwards into the stretch, and then we're pushing our body out of it by using the floor as leverage, essentially, so that that front leg in that pigeon or 90-90 stretch is not just hanging out in that externally rotated position, right? It's it's active and it's engaged, and then we ramp that contraction up, and then we can slow it down. And then from there, we can start programming in like eccentrics and slower movements through the range of motion where you're like expressing that whole range where you pull yourself in, you push yourself out. Or if we want to just target a certain angle or position, we get into that position and then we create an external resistance, we push into it, we pull off of it.
Yeah. So everything that you just described is done throughout your one session of the movement flow. So it might be like spine, it might be a spine one, for example. It might be flow into you've got one called flow into your squat.
Yeah.
So that whole process is done in one session, which I think is absolutely fantastic because it takes the thinking out of it. All you need to do is press play. You press play and you follow through. You are doing the movement flow. We are following, and all of that is incorporated within that to get you ready for what you're about to do, or to let you practice expressing those ranges of motion and force production, you know, on your rest days or after your session, whatever it may be. So what I love about it is when you stretch, when you're doing your stretches, you've often got a list and you're like, tick, done that one, tick, done that one. But, you know, you're not really doing them in any specific order that makes logical sense on how the body moves and how the muscles fire. You're just doing that stretch because it might help that and that one will help that. But it's not logical. It's not logically ordered to get the best out of it. So that's what's so fantastic about your flows, because it leads you through what your body needs to do in order to actually make lasting change. And that, I think that's the really big message here. If you're sick of feeling stiff all the time, it's not rite of passage for a lifter to feel stiff. And that is the narrative, and that is accepted. If you lift heavy weights, you are going to be stiff, but you don't have to feel that stiff all the time. And walk around all day with, you know, the aching traps, or, you know, not being able to, for example, not being able to do other activities in your life because you're scared you're going to tear a muscle. Because I know that for a while there, I would stop doing things like running. Not anymore. Like, I don't run now because I don't want the impact through my joints. But a few years ago, I didn't want to run because I was scared I'd like tear a quad or something. And that's a real thing with lifters. There are so many lifters and strength people that do strength that end up tearing a pec, or they tear tendons, or they tear because all of a sudden one day they've gone into a range of motion that they haven't been in for a while, and everything is so tight it snaps. And that, of course, that's extreme. That's the extreme case, but it's that feeling of feeling that tension and tightness all the time that really wears you down as a lifter. It really wears your nervous system down. And when we talk about nervous systems, you talked about how the nervous system can feel safe in whatever position that we're in. Okay, that's important, because otherwise you can't override that, can you? Yeah. You can't say, oh, yeah, I'm safe. Your body, your nervous system, it's your subconscious does not believe that. So it's going to stop you. But the other thing that's really important is what you incorporate in with your flows is the breath. So can you just explain briefly how the breath throughout your movement flows can have a twofold effect? It can have an effect in the moment, and what we're really looking for as well is that longer term effect on the subconscious, on the nervous system, on the ability to feel more relaxed within your body day to day.
Yeah, if we are stressed and tense going into the movement because it's new, it's different, we're coming off an injury, or in the past on one occasion it's hurt, and we're amped up getting, you know, that fight or flight shallow chest breathing, first off, you like literally cannot learn anything in that state because your body's just like, get me out of here. So we need to down regulate a little bit and get a little bit more parasympathetic so that we can actually process what's happening and make decisions in that training moment. So that you do that repeatedly, then our body's going to learn and just start to do it automatically. So that's where we want to use the breath and the exhale to shift us into that relaxed state so that you can open up the stretch a little bit further, open up the range of motion, settle into the bottom of the squat or like the end range of the pec stretch. Cue your breath and slowly go into it. So your body's like, okay, this isn't that bad. It's just new and it's different, but we're okay. And then we start with those low grade, just isometrics to start with. And then our body learns, oh, okay, we can contract this muscle in this lengthened position or in this really shortened position, which we don't typically train. And then those are the places where we tend to get hurt. Like nobody really gets hurt in the mid range. It can happen, but it's much more rare. So our muscles are starting to adapt. Our brain's gonna let go and like loosen the reins on that range of motion so that then the next time we go do it, you have a little bit more give. And then maybe you hit that wall or that resistance. We go through that same process and we breathe and we start to slowly contract things. We start to move in and out of it. And then the reins keep loosening, loosening, loosening until we have that full access. And then we reinforce that pattern by using that range of motion now on a regular basis, by flowing in and out of it, by going from a squat to standing and then back to the squat and then changing our foot position or taking it into a split squat or something completely different. But our body still knows point A, point B, and it's giving us that freedom to get there now. So we have that safety. So that's where the breath is key. It helps from the tissue extensibility because we get that short-term relaxation and it reinforces that pattern of like, cool, we're safe, we're good. So we can access this.
So in your opinion, is it really important for people to be able to do this unloaded, no weights, before they actually go and do it loaded?
100%.
Yeah. So that's where your movement flow step comes in, right? Because your movement flows really are mimicking, you do the positions that we regularly use as lifters and strength athletes. So we're not just doing downward facing dog, because that's what people think when they think of yoga. Yeah. Your movement flows are actually sitting in the squat and expressing the range of motion in that squat with contraction, relaxation of the muscle and the breath. So if you can do that unloaded and feel confident, then you just do the principles of strength development, which is, you start with a light load and slowly work your way up. But if you can't do it unloaded, how in the world are you going to do it loaded?
Yeah, the load's going to force you into a position that your body's not ready for. So your nervous system's going to say, let's get out of here, and then dump the bar, fall backwards, get stuck under the bar, probably get hurt or tweak something. Or you're going to push through, compensate, and cause other issues. Or it's that micro repeated damage that's going to build up, build up, build up through the compensation, through pushing through. And then your body's going to give up. And that's where these injuries that happen out of nowhere tend to come from. They came from us compensating through things or doing things that we're not ready to do, because an injury is going to happen when the forces that go through the muscle, the tendon, the bone, anything exceed the capacity of what we've trained it to do. So if you're using momentum to get there in a lift, you haven't trained capacity. That's completely different. So you might have enough adrenaline, you might have enough speed to like make it look like you're doing the right movement, but the muscles are not actually doing anything appropriate.
Yeah. I see it a lot in squats. So heavy back squats, a lot of people will say, I need the load to push me into the bottom of the squat. Now, when you think about that, if you can't get into the bottom of the squat without the load, and then you're relying on an external force to push you into a range of motion that you never go into, then what is going to happen to all of those structures that are activating or not activating in the bottom of a squat?
Nothing good is going to happen.
No, nothing good is going to happen. So this is why your movement flows are so great, because they give everyone the opportunity to get into that, unload into those positions, unloaded, and it's really a great tester to see what you actually need to work on. So, for example, although I could squat, my 160 kilos, when I do one of your hip mobility ones, which is got the 90-90 in it, and I'm in the 90-90 and I try and lift my foot off, so my knee stays still and I'm trying to lift my foot off, I have very little internal rotation. Yeah, I've got great external rotation, but we know how important it is to be balanced in all of our joints. So I had no idea that it was like what it was until I did one of your movement flows. So they're really good also in exposing areas that you need to work on. And you're not going to get injured doing them.
No,
You're
'cause
just going to know I'm restricted here, and you're not getting injured in the process. You're not waiting to get injured to realize that you didn't actually have enough internal rotation and then you have an injury.
Yeah, because you've got complete control through how much tension you're creating, how much force you're producing through it, eventually getting to the point of even adding external load into the movement flows is an option too. And the other part that I highlight for athletes and lifters in particular is that these are also good test and retest for you. So if you've done these movements and you've done these drills and exercises and flows, and all of a sudden one day it feels a lot more pinchy or it feels worse, or you're crooked and can't get your spine lengthened through it, that's really, really good feedback to what you need to maybe focus on in the gym or adjust in the workouts or adjust in your cycle of programming to say, like, hey, my hip's a lot pinchier today than it normally is. Maybe I get to spend more time on flows and the recovery side of things as opposed to pushing through those lifts that day. And then if it happens consistently, that's often the sign of maybe we should get this checked out by a therapist or physical therapist or someone like that, because it obviously there's going to be ups and downs and muscle tension and tightness. But if we're noticing that joints are stiffer, pinchier, sharper pains, or all of a sudden we've lost a range of motion that we've had before, that's a signal for us to address it now instead of just pushing through and then getting hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you give us, to wrap it up, can you give people some practical go-tos in what they can do to start like looking into, firstly, what they actually need? Like how do they determine what they need with their thoracic spine, with their hips, with their shoulders? Like you said, that's a good sign if you do a movement flow and you can't get into that position. Would you suggest doing a movement flow for each part of the body and just assessing and then continuing to reassess if there's something there that's not moving properly? Like, where do people start with all of this? Because I think if we just take a random approach and just do what we feel like, we could be missing a structure within the body that actually needs attention.
The daily mobility routine or CARS, controlled articular rotations, is a really, really good one to start with because it's going to break down all the different joints, show you how to take them through what should be the full range of motion of it and how to isolate it. And then you'll know side to side, is there an imbalance or any of those sensations that you may not be in tune with, like what is a stretch, what is discomfort, what is pain, what is pinching. And then I like to use that one every day because once you learn the movements and the patterns of it, you can roll through that in like 10 minutes, doing a couple of really good repetitions of each joint, each direction, and then start to learn what your baseline actually is. And then we can take those into the different positions, like your squat, your lunge, your 90-90, your like a half kneeling hip flexor type stretch. You can start to
Yeah,
go into all of those ones. And then the happy hips class one, or the one that's just about your spine, or the one that's just about your shoulders, those would be the higher level. You got to start with just each joint if you've never done
yeah,
this before. So the daily
yeah,
mobility routine would be the easiest one to learn all the aspects of it. So then you go take the segment after that, and then you go
yeah.
take the movement, right? Joint, segment, movement would be the order.
Okay, so how do people actually access? Now, I know that some of my people that work with me can access your work through my programming, but how do people access your work so they can try it out?
Easiest way would be through my website, which I know you have the link to. It's called Yoga tab at the top. And then you can join my monthly membership where you'd have full access to all this stuff as well for a monthly fee.
Okay, fantastic. Because I know when you bring up the word yoga, I like to call it the yin and the yang. Like
Yeah.
we're in the yang, and a lot of strength people think, oh, well, how much of the other side, how much yin do we actually need? And when they think of yoga, they think, oh, that's meditation, breathing, woo-woo type of stuff. But I can guarantee anyone who is listening that is into strength and lifting that Megan's movement flows are so specific to what we do that you will immediately see and feel the benefits. So if you are interested, go and check out Megan's website and all of the people that I coach. I will get onto which one? I'll get onto the daily mobility routine. Where is that one located? There's three different types of movement flow that Megan has. There is the energy flow, then there is the strength flow, and then there is what's the other one?
Vinyasa.
Vinyasa flow. Yes.
Yeah, so the daily mobility one would be under the strength flow. So anything in the
Okay.
strength flow, so movement flow is the umbrella, and then we've got those three branches. Anything
Yes.
strength flow is going to be active mobility, strengthening through your range of motion, the capacity, all of those things that we just talked about. Vinyasa yoga is the more traditional linking movements through breath, where we're maintaining what we already have. We're expressing what we already have access to and training the breath patterns with it. And then the energy yoga focus one is targeted just to the different energy centers in our body. So the heart, chest, pelvis, hips, root, all the different chakra systems.
Yeah.
So if you want to
Fantastic.
improve your mobility and train it, strength flows where you got to be.
Absolutely. And I'm telling you right now, if you think they're easy,
You're not
you can
doing them.
think again, because every time I do one of the strength flows, it is hard. It is a workout on its own. It's not only improving mobility and range of motion, but it's also strengthening all of those ranges of motion. So, and it is hard. It is hard work. So I tend to go for the vinyasa and the energy flows. I do like the strength ones, but they're work for me. They're hard work. They're good. They're hard work. But the other two are more like aligned to the yin, which is what I was talking about before. So the opposite of what we do every single day as strength athletes. So thank you so much for your time again, Megan. I'll add this into the event page so people can access it. And I'll also put it on YouTube, on my public page of YouTube, because this was actually a public event. Normally I would do it through Strength Seekers, and I thought today I'd just make it public because there's a lot of people who follow me who aren't in my Strength Seekers community. And I really wanted to get your work out there, Megan, because it's so valuable. And my background, gymnastics. Okay, so I've done gymnastics since I was 9 years old, right? And I've been coaching that since I quit as a gymnast. So I know a fair bit about flexibility, okay, because that's what gymnasts are great at, flexibility. Then as a lifter and as a lifting coach for 15 years, I know a fair bit about rolling and stretching for mobility, for strength. Yet all of that combined knowledge has never been as effective as your movement flows. So that is why I wanted to get your work out there, because we don't need to do more. We need to do the thing that's going to help us the most. And I believe this is helping people the most to express their strength the best way that that their body is capable of, and improving that. And the other thing I really love about it is it's not just our performance, it's our everyday life. And it's our everyday energy systems. And often when the people that I coach are injured, I just give them 5 movement flows for the week, all different ones. So I'll do vinyasa, energy, strength, and they still feel like they're achieving something. So they're not doing nothing, but they're still feeling like they're getting into the positions that they would have been getting into the gym. They're still getting contraction of the muscle. And they're also helping down regulate their system, because all human beings, once they don't want to do, like, think they're doing nothing, they like to think they're progressing at all times. So the movement flows actually help you continue to progress when you can't get into the gym.
Absolutely.
So check out Megan's work, and I will put the one that you talked about, Megan, the daily mobility. Is that
Mhm.
what it's called?
Yep.
I'm going to go in and put that on every single person that I coach's program now, so they can
Yeah.
have a little assessment of where they're at, and they can report back to me.
Yeah.
So thanks
Excited
for
to
that tip. That's a great coaching tip for me.
Yeah, I'm excited
So
to hear.
yeah, so thanks so much for your time, and I know we're going to chat again.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks, Megan.
Bye.